position to have, Lieutenant Governor. I never dreamed I'd have the opportunity to serve alongside somebody that I had so much respect for and had developed such a strong working relationship with, that had the same background, the same upbringing, the same faith, the same allegiance to family and community, and a heart of service. And so it's been an absolute privilege to serve alongside, I always say, the governor of the freest state in the United States, Governor Kristi Noem.
Fantastic, and I'm sorry it's so crowded. I wish you all had chairs, but I will try to talk fast and we'll take some questions. And I just wanted to cover our state's priorities, and then also I wanted the chance to come and have a conversation face to face with all of you about your legislators and just tell you thank you. I want to thank you for sending normal human beings here that know how to make wise decisions and make the best decisions for this state. So they really have been absolutely phenomenal. I'd like to just take 5 seconds, if you don't mind. Let each of them come up here and just introduce themselves, say what district they represent. We've got quite a few of them here. Because I found myself a chair, so here you go. Unless you want the chair, you can tell me. Okay.
Representative Mary Fitzgerald. I represent District 31, which is all of Lawrence County. And I just want to say, isn't she special?
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you to the Lieutenant Governor. His leadership in the Senate keeps that a sound body. His experience there and the leadership we have really makes us effective. And this year was very nice for the cooperation between the two chambers and the governor's office. Thank you all for being here.
No, not Scott.
No, Scott gets to talk. There you go.
Scott Odenbach, District 31, here in beautiful Lawrence County. Exciting day. Thank you for coming, Governor, Lieutenant Governor. Just great to see all these great Republicans here in Lawrence County and folks who just care about the issues and the leadership. Yes, and beautiful wife Laura joined me here. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. Gary Kamak, District 29 from downtown Union Center, the home of Lieutenant Governor Larry Roden, and sometimes we know each other a little too well. Welcome, Governor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I'm Mike Derby, State Representative, District 34, covers West Rapid City. I had the pleasure this year of being the chair of the House Committee on Appropriations, and this year it was a general appropriations bill. It was a House bill, so I was the chair of the Joint Committee on Appropriations, worked closely with the governor and Commissioner Twilliger, and it was a great year, and I appreciate how smooth it went working with the Senate, and we balanced the budget for the 135th year in a row. There you go.
Served Western South Dakota that didn't get the chance to be there for session, and that was Mike Dietrich. And he is struggling a lot with his health and struggling with cancer, and I just would like to ask all of you to keep him and his family in your prayers. I know that they need it, and that God has richly blessed them with a lot of joy in the last several days and gotten the chance to spend some time with family. But if you would do that, in fact, let's just pray for him really quick right now, if you'd all bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you and we praise you for the leadership and the service of Mike and his family. And we just ask that you put your hands on him right now and touch his body. Bring him healing and a peace that passes all understanding. Thank you for his service to the state of South Dakota, and help him to know how much we love him and appreciate him. In your name, amen. Left a hole when he couldn't come and serve, and we love him dearly. He represents a part of Rapid City as well. But I do want you to know that you had good legislators that got up every day with the right mission and the right heart for the people of South Dakota, and it makes all the difference in the world when you're the governor of this state. You all know a lot about me. I've been your governor now going into my 6th year probably, and it's just been absolutely the biggest blessing of my life. I love this job. I love this job because I love my state, and I get the chance to wake up every single day and make decisions that are best for you. I think that what is important about this legislative session, and as we were looking back at it, was looking at the fact that this was going to be a legislative session that was going to be very different than the ones that we had had previously. Since I've been governor, I was first sworn in January of 2019. And if you remember back to 2019 with me, when I was sworn in, there was a lot of conversation about the fact that I was going to be the first female governor. And I hadn't really thought about it that much, to be honest with you. I've spent my whole life farming, ranching, running businesses, serving in Congress, kind of one of always just a few women in the room, wasn't really that big of a deal. But when I was sworn in, that day they made a whole part of the ceremony in the rotunda about the fact that South Dakota was electing its first female governor on the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote in South Dakota. That it was like a historic event because 100 years before that, women didn't even have the right to vote. And then here we were electing our first governor that was a female. And I remember standing there looking around at the hundreds and hundreds of people and thinking, oh my goodness, this is kind of a big deal. And I better not screw this up. And so I got nervous. I remember standing there by Brian getting nervous for the first time and thinking, well, what am I going to do? And I put my hand on my dad's Bible, raised my right hand, and I made two promises. The first one was that I was going to uphold the Constitution of the state of South Dakota. And the second one was that I would uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. And I thought, when I got done taking my oath, I thought, well, I can do that. I mean, that's two promises. Who can't keep two promises? So I want you to know from the very beginning, what I've done is that every decision starts with those two questions. Is this constitutional? We go through the state constitution, we go through the U.S. Constitution. What most of you don't know is that when we go into legislative session, when I put together my budget, I have to propose that in December before session even starts. And every single thing that we fund, we look at it through that viewpoint. Every single bill that comes and is proposed, the governor's office staff, and I have quite a few of my staff with me today because I wanted them to hear from all of you too. It's a really great idea for the next 6 months because it's a great political issue and it's an election year and it gives us something to talk about. I want them to think about what happens if we pass this bill 10 years from now. What does it open the door to 15 years from now that our kids and our grandkids are going to have to live with? So just so that it was going to be a governor that grew our state and helped our businesses be more successful. When we got into COVID and started making decisions and everybody started attacking us for it, we probably could have made the same decisions other states made, but instead we decided to be aggressive and put our foot on the gas and start telling people, you know what? If you want to live somewhere where you can be free, move to South Dakota. And our state is growing. Now because of federal dollars that came in during that period, and because of our economy growing, because of businesses moving into this state, because many, many families have moved into this state, we have done some incredible things together. We have started new businesses, we've expanded businesses that were here, we've set historic revenues in our state, we have paid off our debts, we've helped our universities and our technical schools pay off their bonds early. We built a railroad across the western half of the state. We funded roads and bridges and repaired dams that needed to be repaired for the last 40 years. We have a AAA credit rating. We have the fully funded pension fund. There's only 2 in the country and we have one of them. We have increased wages in the state by over 30% just since I've been governor. Women-owned businesses are doing better here than they are in any other place in the country. We broke the record for the lowest unemployment rate in the nation this last year with a low unemployment rate of 1.7% because everybody in South Dakota gets up in the morning and they work. And they work because they recognize that we were created to serve each other. That is the purpose that God gave us, was to get up and to go out and to serve each other, and then we do better. The thing that is so interesting to me is that while we've had all those benefits and we've seen all those wonderful things, we're also the only state in the country that saw our mental health challenges go down. Our suicide rates declined over the last several years, and we're the only state in the last 2 out of 3 years where our overdoses are declining. So for me, it's a testimony to the fact that when you give people more personal responsibility to make decisions for their families, when you give them the opportunity to protect their constitutional freedoms, that they're happier. That they're happier, that they do better, and that they thrive. Buy up our food supply system. So back 30 years ago, they were buying our fertilizer companies, and all of our fertilizer was coming out of China. They started to buy our chemical companies. Then I saw them come in and buy our processing systems. Most of our meat packing plants are owned by Chinese owned investors or companies. And then we've seen them come in and steal our intellectual property. In fact, you don't know this, but this summer we had Chinese spies here in South Dakota digging up our seed out of fields, stealing our genetics so that they could copy our genetics and take our technology to go back and to proliferate it in their country so they could compete against us and raise more grain without having to put the research and the investment into it that we do to make sure that it's safe for people. In fact, in the last 10 years, we've seen them increase their purchases of ag land by 5,300%. I just don't believe we should let our enemies have our land. So we passed a bill that named 6 countries that hate us. It includes North Korea and Iran, Russia, Cuba, Venezuela, China, and says we're just not going to let them own our land. And they wouldn't let us buy their land. We're not going to let them buy it here. And for me, what's incredibly powerful about South Dakota is that we have Ellsworth Air Force Base. So I served in Congress and I served on the Armed Services Committee. Ellsworth Air Force Base is the home of the B-1s that have protected this country for the last 50 years. In fact, when those strikes happened in the Middle East a little over a month ago, those were our B-1s that conducted those strikes. Those were our pilots and our airmen that were over there. They sat in those seats for over 36 hours running those missions and dropping those bombs to protect Israel and in retaliation against that terrorist organization that was trying to kill the Jewish people, but also to go out there and perpetuate violence and death. And extinction is what they were doing. And it was our South Dakota guys and our bombers that went out there and protected us. We also are the home of the MQ-9 Reaper drones. You know that. Those operate every day and conduct missions, but we are the first base in the country to get the B-21 bombers. They will protect this country for the next 50 years. When I was on the Armed Services Committee, we made strategic decisions to move our assets to the middle of the country. And we made those decisions 8 years ago because we knew that China and Russia were conducting surveillance operations on our coastlines. They were using ships and subs to hack into our systems, to steal our data and our information. They were using highly populated cities to hide their nefarious activities, and that we needed to move our national security interests to the middle of the country where there was less people so we could see when there was suspicious activity going on. And Ellsworth was chosen because of where it is and because it was in South Dakota and because we knew that this platform of this bomber was going to be safest right here in South Dakota. Now, I take that responsibility seriously. And I think it's important that we don't let China come in and buy land around Ellsworth, that we don't let our enemies come in and purchase up assets around that, because it matters to us here in South Dakota, but it also matters to this country.
Yep.
If we lose this country with anti-Semitism, it defines what anti-Semitism is, and it also gives examples in statute so that when we have hate crimes happen in our state against the Jewish people and the Jewish community, that we can prosecute them, there will be consequences, and that we won't stand for it. It is the strongest bill in the nation to protect the country of Israel and the Jewish community from hate crimes, and I'm incredibly proud of it. What has shocked me is I don't even know if the legislators know that, since we signed that into law here in South Dakota, all hell has broken loose. Like Hamas and terrorists and Palestinians have come in and death threats and are threatening us from all over the country and the world because we passed that bill, because we stood with Israel. So I'm okay with that if you guys are, but I want you to know, I literally turned to somebody the other day when we learned about how bad it was getting, and I turned to somebody and said, they do realize that they're God's chosen people, right? I mean, that it's kind of a no-brainer that you would stand with Israel, and they're our greatest ally in the Middle East, too, as well. And that all we're doing is protecting them from hate crimes and giving them the opportunity to live a life to where they don't have to face extinction or prosecution, especially in our universities or some of our cities like they're seeing today. So those bills were big bills that passed this year that are making a big statement, not just for South Dakota and reminding us of what our values are, what our responsibilities are, but because South Dakota is the first state in the country to go into legislative session every year, we're also the first one to go out of legislative session every year, which means when something gets discussed during our session and gets talked about and a bill gets brought forward, it's usually the first time that topic is at a hearing. That somebody has brought forward information, had debate, brought opposition. Every other state watches South Dakota's legislators. They watch them and what they say and what they do because of the addiction issue. So it's not that they committed another crime or that they went out and were committing violent acts. It's that they were addicted, they had possession, or somebody had been pressuring them and forcing them to be delivering or dealing, but it was 9 times out of 10 not of their own will. They were scared for their children's lives or scared for themselves. Even in the men's prison, I would say 80% of those folks in the men's prison, it started with addiction. And maybe they committed a violent crime after that, but addiction's a huge issue, and we have very limited opportunities to give them any treatment while they're incarcerated. But even outside of incarceration, we have no place to refer them to, because I just don't believe it's the best thing to lock someone in a cell and think they're going to become better and unaddicted just by locking them up for a while. They need some help and some counseling and some tools that they can utilize to move forward and to take care of their families, and they need mentors. And so I have funded, and we have in the past, over $30 million worth of grants to treatment centers. I also fully funded a treatment center on the Rosebud tribal reservation for several years until they just couldn't keep it accredited, and we couldn't do any more to support them because they were being difficult, to say the least. But we will continue to do that and to create situations where we're offering opportunities for treatment, because I'm just a big believer that people need a second chance in life. And I have people, you guys don't know this, I don't talk about it very much, but every month I probably get 20 to 30 people that ask for pardons, people like you that maybe have something on their record, their ability to take care of their families. They can't get a job in the financial. I'm working for them even though they've been sober for many years. And so we get the opportunity every day to give people a fresh start, but they're not ever going to get that fresh start if we don't give them a toolkit of things that they can use to really help them live a life that helps them be sober. And we have alternative courts here in South Dakota that allow people to, instead of going to jail, go through a program. They're fantastic, but I need judges to refer people to them. So I'm working really hard with the Chief Justice to educate judges on referring people to alternative courts, drug treatment courts, alcohol courts, veterans courts, so that they can go through that program. I stood at a graduation ceremony the other day and had a dad that was in his 60s that had just graduated, and his kids were there, and his kid said, his kid was probably 30 years old, and said, "This is the first time in my life I've been proud of my dad." And it broke my heart. But it was such a special moment. Yes, yes. So, yes. Well, my concern with how it's written is that it'll repeal the tax on booze and cigarettes and on everything else. The way that it's written is very expansive. And I don't know if everybody in this room would agree that all those taxes should be repealed. They just want their groceries. They want every family to be able to go and buy groceries. I go about once every week or two and run a checkout line at a grocery store, just because I think it's good for me to sit there. I can talk to people, and some people don't have any idea who I am, but it's good for me to see how much stuff costs and what it's doing. And you guys, you wouldn't believe it, 1 out of 3 people goes and puts something back. Now, most of the time, I would say those of us in this room, if we got to go get bread, milk, and eggs, and olives, and ketchup, or whatever, we just go get it. But 1 out of 3 of those people are sitting there looking at items, and they're shocked by how much the bill is, and they're realizing they don't have that much money, and they're looking at stuff, making a decision on what they're going to go put back on the shelf. And that's not something that's gotten better in the last 2 years. So right now, the polling in South Dakota says that repeal is going to pass, because people are hurting, and then the state will have to figure out what they're going to do as far as figuring out what gets taxed and what doesn't as a result of that.